When I first noticed the change in my home, it was small, almost invisible. It was the way my son would walk past me without stopping, the way he would answer my questions with only 1 or 2 words. At first I thought he was just tired from work. Everyone gets busy. Everyone grows up. But as days turned into weeks, the silence in our house felt heavier than any words. I would sit in the kitchen every evening, waiting for him to come home. The clock would tick loudly in the quiet room, and I would make tea for 2, like I always did when he was a boy. But most nights, his cup stayed untouched. He would go straight to his room and close the door gently, but that gentle sound cut deeper than a slam. I am his mother. I raised him with my whole heart, and yet, I felt like a stranger in my own home. Sometimes I would hear him laughing on the phone, a soft, warm laugh I had not heard in a long time. When he noticed me listening, he would grow quiet again. He would smile politely, but his eyes looked far away, like his thoughts lived in a place I could not reach. One rainy evening, I tried to talk to him. The house smelled like damp air, and the sound of rain tapping on the windows made the silence even thicker. "Son," I said softly, "is everything all right?" He paused, looking at me with tired eyes. "I'm fine, Mama. Work is just busy." I nodded, but inside, something heavy pressed against my chest. Busy, but not too busy to laugh with others. Busy, but not too busy to forget me. Late at night, I would sit alone at the dining table, staring at the empty chair across from me. I remembered how he used to run into the house after school, excited to tell me everything. Now, even his footsteps sounded different, slower, distant. One morning, I overheard him talking on the phone again. I was in the kitchen, stirring tea, when his voice softened. "I don't know how to tell her," he whispered. "She will be hurt." My hand trembled, and the spoon clinked sharply against the glass. My heart beat faster. "Tell me what secret was sitting between us like a third person in the room?" When he saw me, he hung up quickly. He tried to smile, but it faded before it reached his eyes. I did not ask anything. I was afraid of the answer. That night, I could not sleep. I walked quietly to his door and stood there, listening to the silence inside. I wanted to knock. I wanted to ask if I was losing him, but my hand refused to move. As I walked back to my room, I felt something warm roll down my cheek. It was not anger. It was fear. The fear of a mother who loves too deeply. And that was the beginning of the distance between us, a distance that would soon reveal a truth I never expected. The next few weeks passed quietly, like footsteps on soft carpet. Nothing loud, nothing clear, just silence, building invisible walls between us. I tried to act normal. I cooked his favorite meals. I waited to hear his key in the door. I asked about his day with a hopeful smile, but every answer was short, like a door closing gently in my face. Some evenings, I would find him packing small boxes in his room. When I stepped closer, he would slide the lids shut and say, "Just organizing, Mama." But organizing always leads somewhere. With every box he sealed, I felt a part of our story sealing too. One Sunday morning, we sat at the table together. Sunlight fell across the floor in long golden lines, and the birds outside sounded happier than they should. He stared at his plate without eating, pushing the food around like he was lost in thought. "Are you feeling okay?" I whispered. He nodded, but the nod felt heavy, not honest. He looked like someone carrying a secret on his back. A secret too heavy to hold, but too hard to speak. After breakfast, he stepped outside to take a call. I stood by the window and watched him. He paced slowly across the yard, head down, one hand pressed to his forehead. I could not hear the words, but I could hear the pain in the silence between them. When he walked back in, he tried to smile again. It was thin, like paper. Fragile. That night, I set the table for dinner. 2 plates. 2 glasses, like always. The steam from the soup rose into the quiet air. He walked in, glanced at the table, and said gently, "I already ate outside, sorry." I said it's all right with a steady voice. But when he went to his room, I sat alone and felt the steam fade. The soup grew cold, just like the space between us. I began to wonder if I had done something wrong. Maybe I was too protective. Maybe I asked too many questions. Maybe I loved him too loudly, and he wanted space to breathe. The more I thought, the more I felt my heart shrink. 2 days later, I found a small envelope on the kitchen counter. It had no name, no decoration, just my handwriting on a recipe beneath it. I opened it slowly. Inside was a rental agreement for another place. I stared at it as the room around me blurred. That evening, when he came home, I did not ask. I waited for him to speak. He sat across from me, hands shaking slightly. "Mama," he said quietly. We need to talk. Soon. Those words echoed in my chest. Soon is a strange word. It stretches time, but tightens the heart. I nodded, pretending I understood, but something inside me whispered that soon was already here. That night, the house felt bigger and emptier, as if it knew it was about to lose someone it had held for many years. The morning after he said those heavy words, I woke up early. I moved slowly through the house, touching the walls, the furniture, the old photo frames hanging in the hallway. Everything felt the same, yet everything felt different. It was as if the house itself was holding its breath. I made breakfast the way I always did. The smell of eggs and tea filled the kitchen, but they brought no comfort to my heart. When my son walked in, he looked tired, like he had been awake all night. His eyes were red around the edges, as if he had cried quietly. Alone, we sat at the table without speaking. The ticking clock on the wall felt louder than usual. Finally, he cleared his throat. Mama, he whispered, there's something I need to tell you. I waited, holding onto the edge of the table with both hands to keep them from shaking. I found a new place, he continued softly. It's closer to work, and I think it's time I move out. The words fell gently, but inside, they struck like cold wind. For a moment, everything around me blurred. I forced a smile. You're grown now. Of course you should live your life. He looked at me, surprised by the calmness in my voice. Maybe he expected anger, maybe he expected tears, but I had none left. We can still see each other, he said, trying to sound hopeful. Yes, I nodded. Of course, but we both knew distance has a way of growing when hearts stop talking. He reached across the table, his hand touching mine for a second. Mama, please don't think this is because of you. I swallowed hard. Then why does it feel like losing something I can't replace? He sighed softly. I just need my own space. I want to build my life. I nodded again, even though my heart trembled. I remembered the small hands that once held mine tightly. Now, they were slipping gently away. Later, when he left for work, I found myself standing at the doorway, watching him walk down the street. The sunlight cast a long shadow behind him. I whispered a silent prayer into the morning air. That week, boxes began to disappear from his room. Shoes, shirts, books, memories, each item gone felt like a page being removed from our story. One night, I stood by the window as he packed quietly. He didn't see me. I watched him fold an old sweater I had knitted for him years ago. He paused, holding it to his chest for a moment, eyes closed. A small smile touched my lips. He still carried love inside him, even if silence covered it. But I stayed outside the doorway. I didn't enter. I didn't ask anything. I was afraid if I stepped in, I would break. And sometimes, love means learning how to let go, even when your heart isn't ready. The morning he moved out arrived quietly, without warning in the weather. The sky was clear, the sun was soft, and the birds outside sang like any other day. But inside our home, the air felt heavy, slow, almost thick. I woke up early again, not because I needed to, but because sleep had slowly stopped visiting me. I made tea, though my hands shook slightly as I poured it into the cup. When my son came into the kitchen, he avoided my eyes at first. His bag was already by the door, packed neatly, zipped tight. His room was almost empty now. No books, no shoes, no scattered childhood memories. It echoed when you spoke, like the heart of the house was now missing. Morning, Mama, he whispered. Morning, I whispered back. We sat at the table, but neither of us touched our tea. We just sat in the quiet, listening to the world outside, pretending the world inside wasn't breaking in small, gentle pieces. After a long pause, he finally spoke. I should go soon. I told them I'd be there before noon. Them, not us. I nodded slowly, feeling a small ache tighten in my chest. Of course. He stood up, walked to his room, and returned with one last box. A small one. He held it with both hands, his fingers clinging to the edges as if holding too tightly might change something. I packed the rest, he said softly. If I forgot anything, I can come back later. I smiled, though my throat burned. You're always welcome. When he hugged me, his arms were warm, and his heart beat fast against my shoulder. For a moment, he felt like the small boy who used to wrap his arms around my waist when he was scared of the dark. I closed my eyes and held him closer than I should have. I'll call you, he whispered into my hair. I know, I whispered back, but promises often get lost in busy days. As he stepped outside, I followed slowly, standing in the doorway, watching him put his bags into the car. He looked back once, just once. His smile trembled a little, like a candle flame in a weak breeze. Then he nodded, gently, and drove away. The street swallowed the sound of his car. The silence that followed felt louder than anything I'd ever heard. I walked back inside. The house felt bigger again, colder. I stood in his empty room and placed my hand against the wall where his bed once stood. Dust danced in the sunlight, floating in slow circles. For a moment, I breathed in the quiet, but it tasted bitter. That night, I set only one plate at the table. The clock ticked loudly again, scraping against the stillness. I sat there long after the food had gone cold. Sometimes, losing someone doesn't make noise. It just leaves a space nothing else can fill. Days passed, then weeks. Life continued, but the house seemed stuck in time. Every morning, I still woke up expecting to hear his footsteps in the hallway, the soft sound of his door opening, the gentle murmur of him getting ready for the day. But the silence answered me instead. Sometimes, I would walk quietly past his old room. The door stood half open, as if waiting for someone to return. Sunlight came through the window and touched the empty corner where his study table once stood. I could almost hear the faint echo of him turning pages late at night. I tried to keep myself busy. I cleaned the kitchen twice a day. I rearranged shelves that did not need rearranging. I watered the plants more than they needed. But no matter what I did, something inside me felt hollow, like a drawer left open somewhere in my heart. Once, I tried calling him. My fingers shook as I dialed his number. When he answered, his voice was kind, warm, but rushed. "Mama, I'm in the middle of something. Can I call you back?" "Yes," I answered quickly, before my voice could break. Of course, he never called back that evening, and I never asked why. One afternoon, the sky turned gray, and rain tapped against the windows, the way it used to when we sat together and shared tea. I made a cup for myself and placed another cup across the table. Out of habit, I stared at it for a long time. The steam curled into the air like a soft sigh, then faded slowly. Just like him, a neighbor stopped by once and asked, "How is your son doing? We don't see him anymore." "He's doing well," I replied with a gentle smile. "Just busy, busy." The word that slowly steals people away. At night, I lay awake, remembering his childhood, the way he would bring home small drawings from school, the way he would fall asleep with his head on my lap. Children grow up, yes, they must, but nobody tells a mother how to shrink her heart when they leave. There were moments when anger tried to visit me, anger that he did not call more. Visit more, ask if I was all right, but I pushed it away. Love is not angry, love waits. One evening, while dusting shelves, I found an old family photo. We stood together by the river, smiling brightly, sunlight in our eyes. I traced his face with my finger, and tears gathered quietly without warning. "He's just building his life," I whispered to myself. "That's what good sons do." But my heart answered gently, "Then why does it hurt to let him?" That night, I slept with the photo on my bedside table, not because I wanted to hold on to the past, but because I needed to remember the warmth of what once was. And somewhere deep inside, I truly hoped that someday, the warmth would return. A month passed before he called again. I was chopping vegetables in the kitchen when the phone rang. The sound startled me. When I saw his name on the screen, my heart jumped like a small bird suddenly set free. "Mama," he said softly, "how are you?" His voice held something unfamiliar, a quiet heaviness. "I'm fine," I replied, smiling though no one could see it. "How are you?" He hesitated. "Work is stressful. Life is busy." There was that word again. Busy, sharp as a small knife. "Are you eating well?" I asked. "Yes, sleeping well." Another silence. "I'm trying." I wanted to say more. I wanted to ask if loneliness had touched him too. But before I could speak, he said, "Mama, I can't come this weekend. Something came up." I felt a small pinch in my chest. "Of course," I whispered. "Take your time." We said goodbye, and the call ended. The house returned to silence. I stood in the kitchen holding the phone, my hand trembling slightly. A tear fell onto the cutting board and disappeared into the water. Maybe some feelings are meant to stay hidden. 2 weeks later, there was a knock on the door. When I opened it, my son stood there, looking worn down. His shoulders slouched. His eyes looked tired, as if nights had become longer and days shorter. He walked inside without a word and sat at the table. "Mama," he began, voice low, "I think I made a mistake." I sat across from him, quietly listening. I thought living alone would make me independent. I thought I needed space. But now, the silence in my apartment feels heavier than anything. I looked at him gently. Everyone needs to find themselves, I said. Sometimes loneliness teaches what crowds cannot. He lowered his head, and for a moment, he looked like the boy who once hid behind me when thunder scared him. I miss home, he whispered. Those 3 words spread warmth through my chest. I reached across the table and placed my hand over his. His fingers tightened around mine. You are always welcome here, I whispered, but I will not hold you too tightly. He looked up, tears gathered in his eyes. I never meant to hurt you. I know, I smiled softly. Life pulls us in many directions, but hearts, they always find their way back. He stayed for dinner. We ate slowly, talking about small things, his work, his new friends, the plants dying on his balcony. I listened to his stories, feeling pieces of my heart return. When he left that evening, he hugged me longer than usual. His voice cracked slightly. I'll visit again soon, I promise. For the first time in a long while, I believed him. That night, I sat by the window, watching the moon through thin clouds. The house felt less empty. The air felt warmer. Hope whispered softly in the corners. Maybe distance does not always mean loss. Sometimes, it means learning to appreciate the path back home. The following weekend, my son visited again. This time, he came in with a small bag and a quiet smile. The house felt different the moment he stepped inside. The air seemed to soften, as if the walls themselves welcomed him back. I made tea, just like old times, and we sat in the living room. The clock ticked in its steady rhythm, but it no longer felt loud. We spoke about small things at first, the changing weather, his work schedule, a friend who recently moved away. But underneath the light words, I could feel something deeper waiting to be said. At one point, he looked around the room slowly. His eyes stopped on our old family photos, placed neatly on the shelf. This house feels warmer than I remembered, he whispered. I smiled gently. Maybe your heart needed time away to remember what warmth feels like. He looked down at his hands, turning his teacup slowly. Mama, I have been thinking a lot. I sat up a little straighter, waiting quietly. I thought leaving would make me stronger. I thought independence meant distance. But at night, when the lights go off, the silence becomes heavy. I realize now, strength is not about being alone. His words lingered in the air like soft music. I felt my eyes sting, but I kept my voice steady. We all learn at our own pace. He took a deep breath. I never wanted to hurt you. I was just afraid. Afraid of disappointing you. Afraid of becoming too dependent. Afraid of growing up, I guess. I looked at him, surprised. You have never disappointed me, I said softly. You are my son. You are allowed to stumble. You are allowed to learn. He swallowed hard, eyes glistening. When I lived here, I felt safe. Too safe. I thought maybe I needed to run to prove I could stand alone. But all I proved was how much I still need home. I reached out and placed my hand gently over his. Needing home doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. He closed his eyes, taking in the words. The silence that followed was not heavy. It was peaceful, like rain falling quietly outside a window. After a moment, he whispered, Mama, when I left, I thought I was moving toward something bigger. But every night, I missed hearing your footsteps in the hallway. I missed seeing you sitting in the kitchen with tea. I missed being seen. My heart softened. Sometimes, distance teaches us to see clearly. He nodded. I thought you would be angry with me. I was never angry, I replied gently. Just afraid. Afraid of losing the boy who used to run into my arms. He looked up, tears shining like glass in the light. You never lost me, he said. I was just learning how to find myself. Those words filled every empty corner of the house. They settled into my heart like a warm blanket. And for the first time in a long while, I felt whole. A week later, my son visited again, but this time, something felt different. He walked in not with tired shoulders, but with quiet purpose in his step. He held a small bouquet of flowers in his hand, white lilies, simple and gentle, just like the memories we treasured. He placed them in a vase on the table and sat across from me. The house glowed with soft afternoon light, and for a moment, the silence between us felt comforting, not cold. Mama, he began, voice steady, there's something I never told you, and I should have said it long ago. I folded my hands in my lap, waiting. There was no fear this time, only patience. He took a slow breath. When I moved out, I thought space would solve everything, but every night, when I came home to an empty apartment, I realized I was missing what mattered most. I listened quietly, my heart beating softly in my chest. I missed the smell of your tea, he continued, I missed your voice calling my name. I missed knowing someone cared if I ate or slept. I missed being loved without condition. He paused, eyes glistening. Out there, no one cares how your day was. No one waits to hear your footsteps. No one asks if you're okay. His voice cracked a little. I took your presence for granted. I thought it would always be waiting, silent and patient. I reached across the table and touched his hand gently. You found your lesson, I whispered, and lessons learned without anger stay forever. He swallowed hard. I'm not asking to move back. I just want to come home more. I want to sit here, talk, laugh, and remember who I am. Warmth spread slowly through my chest. This house, I said softly, is not made of bricks and wood. It's made of memories, and there will always be space for you. For a moment, his eyes softened like when he was small, and then he said the words that melted my heart. Mama, you are my safe place. I didn't understand that before, but now I do, and I'm grateful. My breath trembled. Those were the words I had waited years to hear, not because I needed praise, but because every mother needs to know her love was felt, not just given. We sat together for a long time. We talked about nothing and everything. Laughter warmed the corners of the house again, like sunlight returning after long clouds. When he finally stood to leave, he hugged me, not quickly, not politely, but deeply, with both arms, as if anchoring himself. I'll come tomorrow, he whispered into my shoulder. Tomorrow, I repeated, smiling. After he left, I walked through the house. It didn't feel empty anymore. It felt full of echoes, footsteps, laughter, soft words. I touched the walls again, but this time they felt alive. Before going to bed, I looked at the flowers on the table. Their petals opened quietly, like hearts healing in silence. And I learned something too. Love doesn't disappear with distance. It waits. It breathes, and when spoken honestly, it returns stronger than before. Before you go, if this story touched your heart, please take a moment to support our channel. Like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more emotional real-life stories just like this. Your support means more than you know. Thank you for watching.